So you got something interesting, because the next question of mine, which has been asked by our viewers, is to ask you and Sudarshan to take us through your funding journey and how your funding story has shaped up so far. And what is that you talk to your investors that has helped you to raise funds? This question has come from the upcoming budding entrepreneurs who wants to know, in terms of, as you said, you don't want to talk about it, but they want to understand how to raise funds on this front.
Yeah, I'll let Sudarshan take the first call.
No, okay. So funding, like it said, it's not something to be celebrating because it's a day to mourn because I've given away a lot of my company in return. But also it gives a validation on that this is now the value. Otherwise, you really don't know what the value of the company can be. Also, it also gives a sense of validation to our employees who also give blood and sweat. Okay, that I'm a part of the company who's also valued this much. But from a funding journey standpoint, I think one thing which is very clear is finding the right investor. There are multiple investors. The kind of investors we have on our cap table today, I treat them more as my partners. One of them is like my co-founder in itself. Literally helped me in building my MISs, thought process about how we should keep doing. Got me equipped with the right kind of leadership coaching for my entire leadership. More or less hired 50% of my leadership team as well. So it's a lot more that a VC should add and usually add. That's what. While if I can say this VC is my third co-founder, it clearly is that's the amount of value they have brought in on board. So money, there are enough and more people who can take. It's very critical on who you take the money from because, like I said, it's about adding value, but it's also about how people are going to perceive you. You don't want a situation where your investors owning 70% of your company as well, because then people perceive you as a subsidiary and not a company worth investing because somebody else is always going to call the shots, right? So from a journey standpoint, if you have a large problem, be madly convinced about and have that conviction that I'm the guy who can solve for it. I think VCs look at that more about your conviction of solving the problem vis-a-vis problem statement being there in the market, of course. It should not be a solution looking for a problem rather than a problem looking for a solution, right? So that is one fundamental thing. And if you have that conviction, you might not have that experience. I was a lawyer prior to this. I was not into real estate buying and selling. I knew one side of law on the real estate side because that was, as you mentioned, 2/3 of the cases are real estate. So clearly that was what I used to do as well. But at least knowing some sorts of these things are critical, or having some experience or having a team is very, very critical for you to do it. So one, you can raise your seed, but as you keep moving forward in your Series A, B, C rounds, it's very critical to build a team and give autonomy to your team. I think that's something which most of the founders completely miss out. That it's my company, so I should take all the shots. It's fine if your team takes the shots and makes mistakes because Ratan Tata didn't build 1,000 companies if he controlled each and every decision making, or Reliance never became Reliance if Mukesh Ambani was involved in every money spent. You would make mistakes, but find the right guys who can learn from those mistakes and give them that empowerment that, hey, you go and take the shots. I think this is also a large perception about how you'll continuously keep raising funds. If you still have complete control of everything, you can never focus on growth journey. Instead, you'll be focusing on the thing, right? So, understanding time value of yourself and finding the right partner are two more critical things, which at least I've learned in my entire fundraising journey.
So, in terms of overall mission statement, how far have you reached?
So, when we raised our seed round, that was a mission that, hey, we'll do 1,000 crore AUM in the next 5 years. We reached that very fast. So, as much as a founder keeps going deeper into the domain and as they keep scaling up, they have a new mission and a new vision towards something. So we've reached our 2020 vision, if I have to put it up today, which was our 2025 dream as such. But having said that, now we have a larger, mission and a goal to achieve to what it is. So funding is definitely not worth solving. Right today, people talk about profitability. No one talks about, hey, when you're raising the next round, it's like, when are you going to be profitable? This is the new talk at least in founders conferences which we hear. But having said that, that has been our mindset from day one. Goes back to our roots of where I come from. Dhanda for us was profit minus expenses. Income minus expenses profit. Didn't mean what valuation is. End of the day, how much money are you making is what matters, because that's what you can build sustainable business over a period of time. Right? So at least that was there, luckily, and it came in the environment where everyone's talking about it, but that's been the DNA of every Marwadi Gujarati at the end of the day, right? That dhanda is dhanda at the end of the day. Valuations can come, can go, but if you're profitable and you're building a sustainable business, you can continue to keep scaling up to what it is. So mission will always keep changing as you keep evolving in the business, because it's achieving one goal after the other. And like I said, our intent right now from a mission standpoint is only very, very clear that if why do we need foreign funds to buy all the Indian real estate where there is enough and more domestic money to also participate? So it's all about educating the right folks and bringing into this sector instead of anything else. And the larger, smaller, secret mission, which is very, very large from an India story standpoint, is why are you looked upon as China plus one and not why not China itself? Right? Like why not be the large manufacturing powerhouse, and why not a second option?
Yeah.
Why are we considered as a second option? Why not the first option? So that's our right now mission, which is a 5-year journey. But I can't solve it single-handedly. I'm sure it's an ecosystem, but we build that ecosystem together.
I'm really interested to know, Sanjay, what was the talk you had with your investors while raising funds?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love my cap table. I don't look at them as investors. I look at them as people that I want to work with that happen to be investors. That's number one for me. I think character quality matters a lot to me, and I get a lot. They're not only analyzing us, we're also finding out how much of a fit they are for us. And if they wouldn't have funded, I would have funded my own company anywhere. I was one of the largest capital, along with being a founder in my last company, allocated to my own company. I invest my personal capital in almost every single round, along with investors. I'm a strong believer in skin in the game. So I also sometimes look to see it's a great thing that so I come from the hedge fund world. Sometimes I also wonder how many investors are invested in their own funds.
Yeah.
What's skin in the game? It's always easy to play with other people's money, right? And so that's one thing. But one, I love my captive. Everybody on there, I basically handpicked to be able. And after we got to a certain amount of capital, and I knew we were oversubscribed, I went out and recruited the investors that I wanted, right? And then these investors, in turn, helped me with all kinds of things, from hiring to talking about things like that. Like how to think about certain tactics and how to think about what the downsides of this particular decision are, what are the pathways. And so this is something YC also my partner in YC was Michael Siebel in my previous thing. He would say, form your Jedi Council. I don't know how many people are Star Wars fans, but basically there's a council that are like advisors. And so that's kind of how I look at forming my Jedi Council. That was very important to me. Now, coming to actual tactics, I have never spoken with an analyst, associate, VP, principal that has led to an investment. No analyst has ever led an investment. I would say it's almost a waste of time if you're a founder. And sometimes they'll say that, look, hey, sometimes a partner, is busy. We like to do the first round screening and so on and so forth before. And I'll say, cool, no need to talk. But they're also, it's a matter of like, we just want to respect the partner's time. What the thing I'm doing? Like, I'm out here building a business, right? My time is valuable. And by the time you get to a certain amount, I'm also a capital allocator, right? My time, I'm allocating within my own team, just like you're allocating capital to other startups, right? At some point, you end up having more money in your bank account than their fund. So then how valuable is my time, right? And so for instance, like in the Valley, there's Benchmark. They have none of that. It's all partner-driven investments, every single. And the partner is really, really motivated to ensure that company succeeds. There's also solo GPs now that invest, and they're great too because they're looking at the founder quality and going on and so forth. So I would say like YC has been the best investor ever for us, and I think that's really important. I think second thing is also founders should probably, tactically speaking, go through phases where they say I'm either fundraising or I'm not. A lot of founders don't shut that off, and it's a distraction. Like I will literally say, this is my closing date, and after this, I will not raise more money, even if you give me a check, because I have to build. So, and when I'm building, I tell my team, this is fundraising time for me now. I need you to take over some of my functions and split it across. I'll still intervene where it's required. But fundraising is a full-time job. And it's a job of a CEO at early stage, CEO founder to do it. And I have seen founders kind of delegate that out to third parties. And I think part of your ability to raise capital is very important for a founder seed, no matter what it takes, right? So tactically speaking, in my experience, especially if you're a repeat entrepreneur, it's almost even disrespectful to say that partner can't speak with you and the analyst is the first screener. And it hasn't ever led to an investment. There have been 2 exceptional cases where the principal or of that position really believed in us, but couldn't get their partnership to agree to a larger check in us, and then they put in their personal check instead.
Yeah.
Right? Smaller. That means a lot to us, right? So that's number one. Number two, either have a discrete time zone when you're fundraising and when you're operating. Do not make it a continual fundraising cycle, right? And number three is like, be in the mindset, whether they give you money or not, you will still build it. Otherwise, a business is not building in itself, right? Fundraising is not a milestone. Yes. And so that's just the mindset that you probably have. It's more to do with mindset than what investors think and want. Sometimes it's bad luck. They don't see it. Just keep building.
So Ashish, at what stage Propsoch is right now in the funding? Are you guys planning to raise funds?
So we actually went through this initial frenzy that, let's raise funds and, we'll be secure for 20 months, 24 months and all that. But like what you rightly said, right, it's a full-time job and it just takes your mind away from what you want to build, right? And since we were very small and we just incorporated 9 months back, right? I didn't have the bandwidth to actually keep chasing funds. And the questions they were asking me was, so what have you built? How large is your team? Show us your tech. Then I realized if I keep running behind them, then how will I show them this? So then I decided to solve this problem, and that's what we're doing. And hopefully after March, once we have actually put all this together. And the second thing which we are also chasing is a credible PMF story, right? So that it's not just anecdotal where we say, hey, one guy paid me, 2 guys paid me. We want to be like a very strong market fit where people are coming to us naturally, not because I'm spending 2 rupees to get 1 rupee of business. Once I reach that stage, I would actively actually switch hats into this whole fundraising thing. Meanwhile, a lot of people know me because I've been in the industry for long. So my biggest supporters have been my angel investors, Mohit Malhotra, ex-CEO of Godrej, Lalit Makhijani, the Chief Marketing Officer, right? So, people like that are always there to help out. So I can just focus on building the business. And they don't come with those questions like, what have you done? What are you... they understand the market, they understand the business, and they know the gap, right, which you're solving for. So, so that's where I am on the... that's my focus when it comes to the current time period. 3 months down the line, probably we'll just...
I was just saying one more thing I forgot to add that's probably very important is the amount of time chasing funds that are slow moving. It's better to have industry experts and angels that can drop a smaller check. You don't need a lot of money today to build a company. AWS, makes it, server costs are super low. Bunch of no-code tools. Because I also angel invest. I just look at, how they're shipping product. The longer it takes to ship a product, the less likely it's to succeed or not get launched at all. And that comes down to the founder, right? So that's just the one thing. Like, go after angels first, people that you think can add value. Don't be like disregarding about 10L checks or 20L checks and things like that. We found those guys are actually the ones that care the most and add tons of value.
And they talk about you.
Yeah, and they talk about you, right? You mean a lot to them and they mean a lot to you. It's not the size of the check. It's like when they came in. That matters a lot. So,
So when they came in, this is like a very important even question and thought from the entrepreneurs. Do they start from the idea stage concept level to raise funds, or would you suggest that they should build the company for a year and show the numbers and then raise funds?
So I look at a lot of investors, and I think if you can encapsulate down to a single concept, it's a leap of faith. What I mean by that is people that have achieved it before, it's easier for the investors to take that leap of faith that this guy's going to accomplish what he's saying.
Yeah.
And so, some people call it pedigree, some people call it this, but like if you actually look as a repeat entrepreneur and they've seen you do some things, next time you do it and you're drawing out the story for them about what you want to build, then you're forcing the investor to take a leap of faith on you that when you have nothing. But if you've already done it before, it's easier for them to make that leap of faith, right? Your body of work makes it easy for you to kind of paint that story, make it believable, your ambition. And it also has to do with optimism of a particular society. Like you have trust deficit societies and things like that. Like you rightly mentioned one point that the VC asked, why can't I do this? And why the hell aren't you? Right? Like, why aren't you doing it? Right? But it happens in India, right? It's a lot more common. We see a bunch of analyst associates coming out of their fund now, starting their startup, getting funded by their old fund, a couple million here or there. And, it's almost like some VCs are self-replicating themselves in the format of a founder now, because they found that can also be profitable to do so. And then you're surprised when founders sell secondaries at Series B, Series C, Series A, right? You care about corporate governance. Why the f- did you allow them to sell at Series A, B, and C? Skin in the game. Probably, if you don't understand the concept of skin in the game, you're most likely a management consultant in India, or you're probably don't have your own money invested in the fund, and you have other people's money. And even if you do succeed, not you succeeded because it's despite you not having that, you still succeeded, and that still goes to the founder. So instead of thinking about ourselves as picking winners, like talking about corporate governance and all of this at like early stage, people will say there are no numbers to view, but when things go wrong, if you blame a founder at early stage, all you had to do was trust the character of the founder, and if he did something wrong later, your job is to pick great founders at early stage. If he did something wrong back then, it's not the blame of the founder. You have to go back to the source of the funding, right? And like the second point is, then you allow them and engage, and I'll allow them to engage in source of behavior series A, B, and C, like sell secondaries, and they become indisciplined. Like a lot of founders over time, for some weird reason, you're also able to see that they become less fit. They become, from when you first see them to where they are today, they start to have a certain lifestyle. And that is all about, and this is something Paul Graham also talks in one of his favorite essays. It's about anatomy of determination. Sometimes you have inborn will to succeed, but a lot of how you end up being is also about what you choose to say no to. And it becomes extremely difficult for a founder to say no when investors are along with, in the party too. So I don't think we can hold them accountable. I think the founders probably need to hold it accountable themselves. That's why it's especially important how your cap table is constructed and how participative that is. And when people you're not holding yourself accountable, are the people on your cap table blaming you after allowing you to do certain things? Or have they been telling you ahead of time, even when the times are going good, that, hey, you can do this better? Those are the people that we want to have on board. Not allowing you to engage in behavior and being okay and talking you up as you raise each subsequent round, only to be thrown under the bus much, much later.
So Sudarshan, correct me if I'm wrong, so in PropTech, why I'm specific PropTech, we have seen how the growth has been in EdTech, health tech and everything. So in PropTech, if early stage funding someone wants to raise, do they have to have the pedigree background, or they can convince the investors with their idea, or what would you advice, take a year, build your business, show the numbers, and maybe then you can raise funds?
So I think it's a great question. Two ways to look at it. See, when you're raising money, you also have a fiduciary responsibility to take money for the person, right? As that you take the money, play with it, go for a holiday or whatever, right? So it's about you have a fiduciary responsibility. I think it's very important that founders understand that. Many founders don't, and they just burn out the entire money, right? With the ambition that, hey, I want to be a cool guy more than anything else. And he brought up a point that, the founders have a different lifestyle in itself after they raise funding. I've heard multiple founders go and buy fancy cars, etc., etc. Point being, while it's fine, you do it, it's one's choice, but understanding the fiduciary responsibility is more important. So if you think it's an idea, but before you don't have solved even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cases before you say, okay, this is a large problem and I'm happy to solve that, and hence I'm looking at raising funding, is when you should. Consider when you're raising money, imagine you're borrowing money from your dad to run the show, whether it's your ka paisa or ghar ka paisa, end of the day, money is money. So if you're taking money, you have the responsibility to give it back also, right? So founders, like you said, I have a cutoff that I can raise even 10 more million, but also don't need that money. I'm not building to raise, but I'm raising just to continue building, right? So that is very, very important. So I think fundamentally, if you have a PMF, in my opinion, like how he's thinking about at Propsoch, that let me build a PMF while I take smaller checks from investors who are more like partners, who are giving me the right advice on how not to screw up. I think that is a larger investment in itself. Like, for instance, one of our investors who invested in multiple Proptechs in the past gave us a real dope about how not to screw up, how not to do things, because their other portfolio companies spent years building that and then realized that it's not worth it, right? So that insight, that learning, that conversation connect with that portfolio company of theirs, that founder, gave us such a great insight that if you could come here, it's also because of those guys who made us understand that, hey, this is how the whole world operates, and they failed. You operate perhaps this way if you want to, but at least don't go this way, because this is not a means to your destiny at the end of the day. So these are certain parameters. So initial funding from mentors, I would say, more than anything else. If it takes for you to give free equity, it's worth it because their time is a larger investment than actual money. And just be frugal, right? I mean, you don't need money to solve everything. Frugality is also a way everybody has solved and build things up. So PMF, in my opinion, is critical because at least you then know, okay, ye dhanda ban sakta hai, right? Otherwise, people have flamboyant ideas, want to do everything. Somebody wants to serve food from here to space also. But is this even a problem worth solving? Why don't you serve one meal first, figure out the cost if people are ready to pay, and then probably go out and raise money to continue solving for multiple other areas.
True. So Ashish, while going through meeting all these investors, have any investors given you good insights how to not screw up, as Sudarshan said?
Investors who are already on board, or the ones who are
Already on board.
Already on board, I think. So the people who've come on board in my angel round, they are not from the startup ecosystem, right? They are from the corporate ecosystem where I came from, right? So they give me great inputs on how to go about building your team. They give me a lot of good inputs on what are the gaps that they have seen, because while I had a certain perspective on the market, from their positions or their roles, they had different perspectives, right? So they give me very good inputs on that. But when it comes to how not to screw up when you build your startup, I just go online and I watch everything that I can. I speak to a lot of people. I have a lot of good friends who have built their companies, exited successfully, or are still in the journey, right? So I gather as much information as possible, right? And being a slightly older founder, probably compared to both of them, I also play it a little more conservatively, right? So I try something, I test it out, I see whether it's working or not, and then I try and build that up. Even when it comes to hiring, I'm being extremely slow intentionally, because there's no fun in saying I have a 50-member team, right? When I don't know if I can pay them after 6 months, right? So it's better to take that slow. So these are a lot of things. So it's a mix of, my background and my own experience in managing teams and working in a good. End of the day, every corporate was a startup at some point in time, and within corporates, you have startup cycles, right? So, like when I was at Godrej Properties, a 100-year-old name, right? But they had a huge startup cycle from 2010 to 2015-16 when they started going aggressive pan India, right? You learn a lot from that. You realize, what works, what doesn't work, how to pitch, how to leverage brand, how to leverage money, how to leverage individual expertise. So yeah, I'm using all that, and right now I'm growing this thing. But follow a lot of thought leaders in the startup space because there's no limit to it, right? Yeah.
So last question I'll bring from the funding segment. In the recent conversation I had with No Broker Amit Agrawal, I asked him, a lot of PropTech entrepreneurs also have shown that grievance that if we go for raising funds, every investor look in the way does this model exist in China and US?
Yeah.
Is it an already existing model you're running off with in India? If yes, then they are ready to bet. If not, then it's very hard for them to convince, this is how I want to expand the business, or this is how I want to bring in numbers or the customers. But they feel they still face certain problems. It's not a Me Too concept. So what is your take on that, Sanjay?
I mean, there's something we again used to learn in investing management, which is like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? Like you do need to have some kind of frameworks that you need to operate by, and obviously you pick up some things that have existed. You don't need to reinvent the wheel in everything. As a founder, there's already enough stuff that you're dealing with and inventing. There are some established protocols for some certain divisions that are built. You don't need to rework that whole thing again. Now, when it comes to like investors and what they're seeing, whether they're saying that there's a model equivalent to US and China, like when they say no, this is again something Michael C from YC says, trust the no, not the why, right? They can give you all kinds of explanations for why. And you shouldn't even expect that out of them. Like if they give it, great. If they don't respond to your emails, that's fine too. And sometimes they won't, right? That's just how they are. So signal for you next time they come to you and want to give you money. And in terms of investing themes, we've seen a lot of Indian parallels being built using US and China models. I would pause it and say, how are they doing? Right? A lot of data speaks for itself. And so whether it's retail, whether it's fintech stuff, like how are they doing so far in India?
Yeah.
Right. TCS seems to be doing fine. Infeed seems to be doing fine. Basically, they're using the lower labor costs in India and selling to US markets. That's a great business in India.
Yeah.
Right. Take India's advantage and get revenue in dollars seems to be the working mode for majority of the companies, including Reliance here, Sun Pharma, a lot of things. Like, what does India have as an advantage that's unsubstitutable by other countries? One example of that, like when you're looking at even in India, is like spices. Like China cannot out manufacture you in spices. China can beat you in almost every single way when it comes to tangible production, manufacturing. Like bar none. There is nothing you can say India is more competitive than China in when it comes to manufacturing, including cost of power per kilowatt, right? So that means you look at stuff that's unsubstitutable in India and how you use it as an advantage to sell maybe to other markets. But to draw parallels from US and see if that can be replicated in India sounds like a very McKinsey thing to do, right? Sounds like a very top-down way of looking at things. I try to preach within my company, and something that the way that I think about something you also get from epistemology is like source of knowledge. Like from the bottom up approach is a far superior way of thinking through your plan. And sometimes maybe that ends up, being similar to a Western counterpart. But by no means am I looking at a Western counterpart and I'm saying this is what needs to be done. Because if I'm building Landeed that way, this doesn't exist in US.
Yeah.
And who believed in us more than Indians? Indians outside of India, or white people, right? Believed in us more than sometimes even Indians. We have a very ingrained sense of following status quo and saying this is a trust deficit, this is a high risk market, this is something we should penetrate, this is something we should take a veil off. And then we celebrate why so many Indians leave the country and are CEOs of other, companies without wondering why the hell they're not here. So the ecosystem needs to be built around that. Never trust an investor that wants to look at India, like American equivalent of it in India.
Mm.
We are a like 60% of India lives on less than $2 a day. There's literally no software product you can build for them, right? Nothing I can build today, and I'm very cognizant of that. And like there are, and a lot of the business that you see in India that are successful are taking the India advantage and getting revenue in dollars. Still today, but that doesn't mean like you get the consumers used to free stuff. Make Indians pay. Make us pay for everything. Like that's what we do. If they don't pay, like again, make people speak with their wallets. Let them vote with their wallets. And that is a great way of really knowing whether the market wants something that you're building or not. Like people ask, like, how do you buy trust? It seems to be like in India, you buy trust by discounting, which is a very paradoxical thing to say, right? But yeah, so like pedigree, all of this doesn't really matter. It only so matters because that's what a particular locality here believes. And if that locality is not working for you, you have two options. Find a way to get out of that locality. Or two, build a product that nobody can say no to. I could not do this latter. So I chose to go with the former. I found a locality that does believe in what we're doing, that believes in me. And for most of the investors, when they put in the money, like I send them my core principles. If you align with this, I will take your money. If you do not, we will not get along. And I'm happy to buy you out. So that's generally the principle we follow. If somebody wants to get out, I'm like, great, awesome.
So Sudarshan, when you had entered the market, you were the first and the only player in the fractional ownership. And now we are seeing more players coming into it. But you were the one who broke that barrier for Indian market. And now the other players are able to easily raise funds because the investors have seen Strata ke saath kya hua tha and how it's a good profitable business. So do you think this works when it comes to raising funds, that if you're a Me Too concept and you'll be able to easily raise funds because there's already functioning models or the companies which you can see their P&L and everything, or like No Broker was the first company in India where even in global market there was no model like that. So what is your take on that?
Oh, honestly, a very, very interesting question. We hear from a lot of, in fact, one of the VCs called up to do a ref check about our business to invest in another company. Like, what are you even thinking of this? Right? But having said that, I mean, to me, it is more like an accomplishment that an idea is now an industry when people are taking us as benchmarks, which means I really need to upgrade my benchmark better because they're not as low as what people can think. Our capabilities are far better. But having said that, this is a problem that even if there are 5-10 companies, still it's too large a problem to solve for, right? Yeah. So I'm glad that this is there, number one. Second, I'm spending marketing dollars. Now I see that if there are 3 other companies, I know I'm going to win. I'm going to beat them out overnight. I'll be a monopoly trade over a period of time. So I'm just seeing somebody else is putting money and educating the market and creating an industry for me. I'm very happy if more Me Too's keep coming because they're going to keep spending more and more money and educating the market. That's my biggest take. So I really promote more and more companies coming into this domain. And also I think awareness will eventually spread to investors who are deploying capital with us. Our retail investors will keep deploying that. It's not about the asset I'm going after. It's also about the asset manager's capability to manage the asset for me, right? What if your asset manager doesn't exist tomorrow, right? So that's also very, very critical, which smart investors do understand. You can take them for a ride once as a new player. Like some people trusted us. So I'm sure people will continue trusting us. But we are very clear, we want to be the Hondas of this market. We will outbeat everybody with our speed, with our execution, with the vision, with the tech capabilities which we built. But like I said, I'm just glad that people keep us as benchmarks. So I think we need to upgrade, number one. And second, I'm glad that people are spending more and more money to educate the market, which just helps me bring my CAC cost down drastically.
Ashish, what's your take on this? On this Me Too concept, is it easy to raise funds on that area, or idea of stage where there's no business running, even in global market? There's still a certain kind of difficulty in raising funds.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's easier to raise funds when you are a Me Too concept, right? If the problems are similar in both the countries, right? The problem is when you take a solution which worked for the US and try to put it on India, and India doesn't even need that solution, then you are in trouble, right? You might be a Me Too, you might be a great Me Too, you will have the entire user experience replicated. But if no one wants it, then what are you going to do, right? The other way to look at it, India's problems are very unique, right? Maybe a few developing countries in the world will probably follow India. Like India could be the US to those countries for the solutions that we create here. So one is there's a lot of domestic demand, right? Which especially in real estate, you don't really need to be a Facebook where you need to go global, right? Here, when you talk about PropTech and real estate, the demand is crazy. And like he rightly said, people, the majority of the population is, they can't even afford anything today, right? But there's a huge middle layer which is very aspirational, right? So while we are all building products today for the top 1% of India's people, that middle layer is aspiring to go into that space, right? And that 1% will become 4%, 5%. Now, that itself is like a crazy amount of growth. So why, waste your time trying to create something which worked in the US, which might not even work here? Just solve for the problems here. And as you keep solving and people see value, then the money will come in. It's not that big a deal. But yeah, I've been asked this question, like, I think you asked me that when we came in, right? So I gave him an equivalent. I mentioned MLS, but honestly, we're not building MLS of India. We're doing something else altogether, right? So, yeah.
So, Sudarshan, the upcoming ULIP, Unified Logistic Interface Platform, I want to get it right, will it boost the warehousing demand in the coming time?
So I'll give you a background on why government is also thinking of it, right? Why they're creating this whole multi-modal logistics parks across as well. So if you want to be an export economy, your tertiary or your logistics cost cannot be in double digit. Our logistics costs are right now in double digit, which is how China is right now. They are at single digit, in fact, I would say sub-single digit because it's less than 5% asset. So there's a big journey. So infrastructure is definitely one way. So this gives a perspective on how important government is also thinking for our exports to be as competitive, while our domestic consumption is also high. We need to also become competitive from other standpoint, right? Because if someone is importing something from China with the logistics cost and is competitive, then your domestic manufacturers can take a toll. So that's very, very critical from that standpoint to look at. So kudos to government to thinking very proactively. Big fan of Nitin Gadkari in general from a personal standpoint. One of those amazing ministers who really thinks about India, thinks about solving problems. And more importantly, there are many ministers think, but he's a guy who's executing it as well, right? So I hope there are more and more such people who continue doing that, making us more competitive.
Since you deal with commercial and warehousing segment, looking at India's future with impetus on infrastructure, manufacturing, growing demand, supply of chain, which segment would your investors give better yields, or warehousing or commercial?
So commercial as a sector, people take a synonym with office assets, right? So I think that's what you're quoting to. So technically, even industrial and warehousing is commercial real estate of sorts. What is not residential is all commercial. So our focus right now is on industrial and warehousing assets as a sector in itself, because we clearly think this requires a lot of investment to build that infrastructure, unlike office assets, which someone took that initiative. Let's take in Bangalore, embassies in the early days took the initiative to build, and from whatever 10, 20 million, 40, 50 million square feet, we are now at 800, 900 million square feet demand. We are at 250 million square feet overall of warehousing stock right now. Whereas look at China, it's at 11 billion square feet. Boston, as an example, is at 280 million square feet, more than what India's stock is. Just Boston as an example, right? Chicago is a billion square feet of warehousing stock in general. So big shift required for, like I said, if you want to be competitive, you want to sell to the world. As an investor, you follow the trends and be an early investor in that. Like I look at a classic example today. What market usually thinks that okay, we are going through a huge energy transition where from thermal, coal, etc. to nuclear, we are now thinking of green, right? So investments in solar, investments in hydrogen, etc., which is happening. So one way to look at it is follow the world. Oh, let's go buy Adani Solar, let's go buy Tata Solar, let's go buy Reliance Solar for stock. Share price will go up, etc. to do it. Our perception is always look at the other side of the story. Let's look at who are the vendors for these companies and buy their stock, right? Buy their company, right? Because their growth journey will be 10x, 20x, whereas their percentage growth might be 10, 20% only, because they're already too valuable from a company standpoint, right? So it's that whole gold moment which happened in California back in the day, right, where everybody went to find the gold when gold was discovered. The real winners of sorts were Levi's, were multiple banks which became banks because they said, "ठीक है, आपको mining करना है. Why don't you buy my things? Because this way your clothes won't get torn out and you can continuously keep mining whatever's worth," right? So that's how we look at it as well. So let's say when we invested in Hosur as a market, when we started building warehousing in industrial space, nobody was there. I've got calls from right well wishers at that point of time. You just started. Why are you taking such a bold call? कोई भी नहीं है वहाँ पे. We said no. I have conviction on the government first, conviction on that micro market which will do well as well, and that's what we did that, and we are very successful from 2 lakh square feet now about 26 lakh square feet, more or less leaders in that particular market. So you want to continue being that. So we focus on that as one segment. One other segment which we are focusing on very heavily this year is hospitals, healthcare real estate. I think super under-penetrated. We are at 0.7 beds per thousand. Vis-a-vis China is 6 beds per thousand. US is about 5.5 beds per thousand people. I think a lot of awareness is happening. People are getting insured as well. A lot of insurance growth is also seeing so, which means people can now afford healthcare, which was not a case before. Tier 1 is where all the healthcare is. I think there's a large Tier 2 market who has more money than Tier 1 to afford healthcare as well. So that's one segment we want to cater to. Again, don't follow what the world is doing. We want to create a new market and build more value for our investors over a period of time. So that's our vision. Certain people who are not as risk takers as we may want to perceive ourselves as might disagree with our views, but our early investors who believe are sitting in that golden moment where they are sitting on upwards of 40-50% in terms of returns in just 2.5 years.
So I remember when you guys entered the warehousing segment, it did surprise everyone.
Yeah.
So the time you entered this market, not just warehousing, the time you started with the fractional ownership, from that time till now, would you mind sharing us how big the market has become?
So let's take this as my first asset, which we did pretty much in the pandemic. As such, I remember like a refugee, I crossed the borders from, I was in Chennai at that point of time to come to Bangalore to register the asset. So we were in that period. I think what we're doing is not something new. Everyone has bought assets together. Friends have bought assets together. Families have bought assets together. We solved for one thing, that let's buy real estate online first. And during that period when we were bringing the idea to the world, everybody was at home. So they have all the time to hear us out. Our early believers believed in us, so very thankful for them being that evangelist to make this industry in itself. But the thing was, if someone has to start today, like all the newer companies who are trying to start today, their challenge is now to get that attention from those investors. Right, so that has been our advantage. It's more about timing. We took a bold call like you said, many people were surprised that what are you trying to do in the pandemic. We took that early call, gut call, whatever you want to call it, but that is biggest game changer from our end. And that has continued for us, right? So the first 1.5, 2 years of our business, we're 2.5 years old. 1.5, 2 years was about selling Strata to the world, right? Hey, you buy online, it's an SPV structure, you get CCDs issued. Many people didn't know what CCDs itself were. Where etc. Many people it was very hard for them to believe that real estate online bhi kharida ja sakta hai. There can be a dashboard where there's so much transparency because they've never seen that transparency in their life. So that was the journey to a journey right now where I don't have to sell Strata anymore because people know what Strata does, and now it's all about telling about what this particular investment opportunity is, right? So our calls, which used to be for about 40-45 minutes, are now down to about only 10-15 minutes, right? And thanks to leveraging technology in multiple ways, whether it's doing webinars, recorded things on via YouTube where people can track, and multiple other things, has helped us to achieve to where it is right now. So from a market standpoint, I think collectively us and all the other players put together, we are at about 1700-1800, while we have a lion's share of 50-55%, 60% of the market. The intent is to continue having monopoly and grow this to 70-80% market. But at the same time, I want that 20-30% also to grow at the same time, because only then an industry gets created. We get a voice to work collectively and try to create an industry in itself and probably take it global over a period of time, right? So that has been the journey from that side. Also, it was not just the journey on the investor side, it was also on the seller side, right? So when we are talking to sellers, while we've cracked the code of selling online, we still haven't cracked the code of buying online. Right? Many sellers, because for people in India, real estate is very emotional even now. Oh, it's like my baby, I'm selling it out, etc. So they're like, no, I want to meet who it is going, kiske haathon mein ja raha hai, etc. etc. So that unfortunately used to be, and many people didn't have conviction that you're yesterday's boy, you're a new kid in the block, you're a child, how can you buy 100 crore asset? You're coming in saying big things, but you have conviction, etc. So that was also one big, I would say a mindset change which now sellers also have. We have large developers, like literally tier 1 developers coming to us and saying, hey, can we partner and scale it up?
Yeah.
While large funds make us run around to get their money, how VCs make startups run around, so does large PE funds make developers with their terms and the timelines they take to deploy money. They're like, can we operate and can we build large portfolio together? So people are now talking about partnerships. Erstwhile where they were having doubts, okay, you have capability also, who are you? We don't believe this is scalable. So now developers also believe this is there. Again, we've shown them as such, but also that is a big change we're seeing. So it's solving for demand as solving for supply both together, that convergence. We are seeing early signs. We're still at level 1 demand supply, I would say, in terms of matching. We're now entering level 2 demand supply matching where awareness is there. Now it's about reaching to the larger audience at a large scale. So we are not the Bharat story. When I say Bharat story, it's like I'm not a product for the 140, 150 crore Indians. I'm for the 30 lakh Indians who have money. Competing with the 10, 15,000 people who have 10, 20, 50 crores and about to deploy, and making a senior manager in an IT company making 25, 30 lakhs, buy the same assets, get the same kind of revenues vis-a-vis the CEO of that company who had 10, 50 crores to deploy money, giving them that same investment experience, same returns for their investment, as well they were putting in residential making 1-2%. And you've seen that change, right? Like 3-5 years back, residential used to be 70% investment, 30% end use. Today it's 60% end use, 40% investment. While obviously the share of the inventory has also gone up, but you see that mindset change. People are realizing that it's not worth it. So that all that money is eventually going into stock market or other asset classes. I'm the only one, I would say, batting for the real estate market to get that money back into real estate, which is going away from real estate into CRE. So it's in the interest of all the developers also that, hey, let's work together. Otherwise, that money will go into stocks, that money will go into FDs, etc. And real estate investment is very, very critical for the country to grow because we employ the largest number of people, great for the growth economy because credit is also the highest consumed in this sector also at the same time. So that's what we are trying to solve. So it's a collective thing. Early signs from where we were, we've now from basement we've come to ground floor, but we'll be building banana.
Lastly, I want to ask you, like early struggle for Strata was to create that awareness, to educate investors about fractional ownership. But now the more companies which are into fractional ownership, the startup companies, you have made it easy for them, for the market, for the investors to understand. Now they know what to, what fractional ownership is, kahan kis tarah se investment karna hai. But what edge do you have now, right now, over your competitors?
So one thing which is happening is all the assets which we say no is the one which they take, right? So at least we know that we're getting the best of best, which we at least have the privilege because of the scale at which we are as such. So not that I'm saying bad for them or bad for the investor to take an asset which we rejected, which was not under our parameter. Everything has a value in itself. But having said that, I think, like I said, it's not a one-man show who can continue solving and creating a barrier, solving for that barrier and moving ahead. It's an industry which goes together and builds together. You don't have one bank which is a monopoly. You have multiple banks solving for it, and they have a word where they can work with the government and create better things. I think that will help us to create, norms with regulators over a period of time, etc., and create an industry in itself. So while we are happy that we started it, I'm happy that the people who are trying to solve what we are also solving, they also have the same vision. But investors are smart. They are understanding who to deploy money with because it's 80% deploying about the asset, but it's also 20% about asset management because my work is not about selling, my work is about managing after you buy the asset. That's when I come in as Strata as such. So it's about 50% solving कि हमने asset ला दिया, but उसके बाद real काम चालू होता है, right? So that's what people need to understand who don't. That it's not that I'm saying a new company cannot. but please understand the credentials of the company, the guy who's running the show, the team who's running. Don't just go run around the asset as such more than anything else. So it's a holistic thing which you need to look at, and then you start to learn.
So Ashish, what I found different about you is you're not starting as search. You're a step later.
Yeah.
So how the strategy is playing out, and have you acquired your customers?
Right. So while we also help in search, right? So a lot of our customers are coming to us saying, "I want to buy a property. Can you advise me how?" So what we've done is we've broken that whole process into 4 stages, right? The first stage is where we kind of map out what the customer's actual priorities are in life, right? So, and when I say customer, there are multiple decision makers when you're buying a home, right? It could be a spouse, it could be your parents, it could be your in-laws, it could be anyone. So what we do in the first stage, so that we save a lot of time and effort in the next 3 stages, we have a conversation where we say, you tell us what your top non-negotiables are when it comes to a house. They'll give you 4 or 5 non-negotiables. Then we say, hey, by the way, there are 10 more parameters in when you buy a property which you are not aware of, right? And then we tell them, this is what industry experts have said. These are parameters which you need to look at. Now their non-negotiables, which they had put out earlier, suddenly change, right? They say, oh, these parameters are so important to me and I never knew about it. So then we finally arrive at a proper non-negotiables and negotiables prioritization for them. And then we deep dive into, long listing of projects, which projects are 100% match to what you need. If there's no 100% match, what is the 80% match? And we have made everything analytical, right? It's not a soft thing. We say, okay, this is the data. These are the projects which match what you want. And your non-negotiables are all covered by these projects. Now, you still can't buy in 10 projects, right? You want to buy one home.
Yeah.
So then we have the third stage where we say, okay, let's shortlist 3 projects out of this, basis the pros and cons. And that's where, our experts step in, where we put an architect on the table and, he or she analyzes the floor plans and says, what, the kitchen is smaller, but your bedrooms are bigger, your balconies are smaller. So we go through that process and they end up with 1 or 2 units ultimately. And the fourth stage is where we take them to the site visit and we help them look at that particular, project. If it's completed, then they look at a finished unit. Otherwise, they just get a vibe of the whole place and then they take a call. So what's happening here is one is we're educating the consumer at a very, very deep level, right? He's getting the satisfaction that he bought a property with his eyes wide open. So tomorrow when he moves into that house, he knows, yeah, I'm going to be facing this high tension line. This is the call I took at that point in time. That was the trade-off. Now the second beautiful part which is happening is for developers, right? Earlier they had to sell the whole story to the consumer, do multiple site visits, take them, bitch about other properties and then convince them to buy here. 80-90% of the job is done at my table. Now, when I take them for a site visit, it's literally giving a check to the developer. So the salesperson's job, the conversion ratio has really increased when someone comes to a site visit. Now, this is an unintended consequence, but which is really good, right? Because closures are happening faster, consumers are educated, and we are getting paid for the advice that we give, right? So that's how we are taking consumers through the whole journey right now.
So what kind of traction you have seen so
Yeah.
far?
So with respect to traction, what we're seeing is so the service which I'm talking about, we launched last month, right? Till now, we were mapping out the 400 plus projects in the city, and every customer that we are servicing, he's bringing in at least 2 more customers for us, and that's a phenomenal number. And they're giving us testimonials without us really pushing them for it, and we're seeing that. So, and we're doing it all organically. We're not doing any paid marketing right now, right? We are going to do it at some point in time, post March, when we have the whole website out there. So the traction we're seeing on a weekly basis, we are probably closing 2 or 3 properties, right? And we obviously want to take it to a much, much higher level. So in a long-term sense, you'll actually see Propsoch replacing the brokerage business, right? So because brokerage business is all about, these are the 2-3 properties, quickly buy, otherwise someone else is going to buy it. Now consumers are going to come to Propsoch, they're saying Propsoch kiya kya before buying a property. They'll understand the property, buy it at their own leisure without any pressure from us, because we are not even pushing them to buy. 2-3 guys, we have said, don't buy. Okay, this property is overpriced, everything's over, don't even invest here. And we'll say 6 months down the line, I know this developer is going to launch a project which will meet all your requirements, and they hold back. Right? So we're taking that approach, because in the short run, it might mean that our revenues will slow down, but in the long run, it means that people come back to us every time they want to buy a property. And they also tell 5 other friends of theirs that, talk to these guys if you're buying a property. And find good traction with NRI clients, right? Because for them, it's a real challenge when you're sitting in the US or in Dubai to buy a property. The second big product of ours, which is selling, is people who have done their research and now they're totally, paralyzed because they don't know what to do now. So they come to us and say, these 2-3 projects are shortlisted, and we do a comparative analysis and we tell them, probably this is what will work better for you. Then they go ahead and pick it up. So, yes.
So who would you consider your direct competitor to Propsoch?
Interesting question, because I like to believe that we have 100% market share in curated advisory for home buyers. So there's no competition there, but obviously the competition is the other revenues in which people buy homes. Either it is through the local brokers, or it's through the organized brokers, right? Or it is directly through the developers' marketing efforts. So we want to be in the space in between all these channels. So irrespective whether it's buying from a broker or from a developer or from another online broker, you go through the Propsoch filter and then you make the decision, because I'm collecting money at that point.
So make me understand that because Square Yards is there,
Yeah.
they are taking mandate business
Correct.
by selling the projects of developers.
Yeah.
And then there's no broker, where they are filtering the brokers out of the picture
Right.
and selling the properties
Right.
as well. And they have other verticals now coming, where they are even providing loans, where they are even providing the management services.
Where,
So how would you compete with these players who are already in this market and already opening up with so many verticals to
Right.
cater to one customer, so that the customer does not have to, the recall value is there,
Yeah.
and the customer does not have to go anywhere else.
No, absolutely. So the good part is I'm the small guy here, right? I have to eat into their market share. They're not eating into my market share, right? Secondly, like I mentioned earlier also, the intent and the business model which we are building is not what these guys have built, right? So no broker today is moved into various services, including servicing of your air conditioner and stuff like that. I don't foresee myself doing that ever, right? Because my intent is very clear that if there are 350,000 homes being sold in the primary market in India, the top 8 cities, right, of India, if I get even 10% of that market using my services, I will be, from a revenue perspective, much bigger than most of these players that you just named, right? Now, from there, I can decide if I want to go down the home loan route, I want to go down the interiors route, because I've already won the customer's trust. And I will take the same approach. So tomorrow, if we're also going to help them with interiors, I'm going to help map out all the interior players out there, put out their credibility, and tell them this is what you can expect from this player. If you're doing a home loan, I will do the same thing, right? So my approach to the problem is contrarian to what's happening in the market. You mentioned mandate business, right?
Yeah.
Now that's clearly a bias towards the developer
Yeah.
in terms of they want to sell the developer stock, and whatever it takes, they will sell that stock. So where does the consumer fit in that space, right? Doesn't. So I'm solving for that piece of it.
So Sanjay, one of the most wonderful thing about any successful startup is their timing, and the time played according to your role, how the Landeed has come into the picture, and how did it help in terms of the current narration which is going on, is even the government initiative which has come in for the digitization of a land record, and the particular, I'll tell exact, Digital India Land Records Modernization Program that they have launched, which is going to add to your fuel to your narrative. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, so actually, that's a very important question, because we literally could not have built this in 2014-15 when I first came to India, even if I wanted to. A lot of what is possible today in terms of what we built is because the government has already done great work in some of these particular things. Particularly, I should say the state, each respective state governments, because land falls under the purview of state governments, mostly the central government. Because they made these data sets, some of them open, and we're able to build something on top of, right? They've given the, like the very, very primitive rails for which we can build and, build beautiful products on top of. So it's absolutely key. This would not have been possible in, nearly 7-8 years ago. So that's been very important. Now it comes to the digitization of land records and all of that by the government. I think surveys and those kinds of things are not really the problem for India. If you see, majority of the core problems in India have to deal with the strength of ownership over property, not the boundaries and the widths and quantity and dimensions of the property, so on and so forth. It has a lot to do with the way that our system is working. I'm not sure how the land modernization program really works, and because of the way that a lot of federalism is something that works, there might be states that are not fully cooperative with, let's say, the central government, that might choose to not be as participative.
Yeah.
And so we don't look at them as sometimes we're a substitute, sometimes we are collaborative. It depends on what that particular state, what my user wants in that. So right now, what users really want is transparency. Do I own the stuff that I think that I own? Right, so that's where we're starting with. So you're right, wouldn't have been possible a few years ago. It's probably in the last 3-4 years is when this could have been possible.
So there are a lot of data intelligence companies like PropStack and PropEquity, and for them to bring the data in terms of recent transactions and everything, it's quite easy because it's quite available out
Right.
there. But when it comes to land records, it is very unorganized
Right.
still. Government digitization of land records was going to happen way back before also the talks were happening, but now finally the initiative is going on. What kind of key challenges are you facing right now?
I don't think India likes to pay for analytics and intelligence and information, because I think in our country, majority of the population tends to believe still who you know is more important than what you know. And for that reason, as social construct again, I don't think we really value information that we think gives us an edge, because we think what gives us an edge is who we know, mostly in this lot, especially in real estate. Right? For instance, like in our trading days, if I was at a hedge fund, like you gotta get a Bloomberg terminal. A Bloomberg terminal is nearly $20,000-$30,000 a month, right? And the reason that it's that much and people still pay for it is because they think the market is very, very competitive. You have top tier competition, so you're trying to get every single edge.
Yeah.
Here, the edge is not information or intelligence. Here, the edge is basically who you know to get your shit done. So why would people value knowing a little bit more? So I'm sure there's a lot of value that's to be there, but I don't think it's for mostly the Indians that really care, because I think a lot of the time when we make big ticket purchases in India, we're going a lot by social proofing. We're going, if something's go wrong, we find comfort in who else do we know that's going through a similar problem, because we know the court systems don't work effectively. We know justice execution doesn't work effectively. So we care a lot about that kind of stuff. So we're not really like focused on providing some certain intelligence. The only thing we're really focused on is, like I said before, do you own what you think you own? And can we help you own something faster? Can we help you sell something faster? Not by building a transaction engine, but giving you the resources to be able to do whatever you want to do. We're enablers. One thing I really hate doing is thinking of myself as a gatekeeper for people to make decisions. I want every single user using my product to feel like a hero. We ask them, like, using our product, are we their super weapon to be able to finish what they want to do? Instead of saying that this is the only platform where you can come and do the stuff that you want. So I don't think people value a lot of real estate intelligence, if that makes sense. I think a lot of the people that do purchase it tend to be a small fraction. Maybe foreign investors that invest in India because that's where real estate has given them the best returns. Small section of enterprises. But if you look, a lot of real estate in India is fragmented. There's no Lodha, DLF, Embassy. None of these guys have double-digit market share in development or residential unit in Nandani, right? So I would say that the edge and the intelligence matter very little, because our main competition even is the offline market. It's not somebody in the online market that's doing something similar to us. It's literally trying to take the people that are doing whatever they're doing offline, trying to make them do it online to make their lives easier. So, yeah.
So would you consider TEAL, that is Terra Economics Analytic Lab, as a direct competitor to Landeed?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I've heard about them. I love the work that they're doing. I think they are mostly focused on enterprise and so on and so forth. But our focus is really not on them. Our focus, again, is on our users. To be honest, I've mentioned this before. TEAL is solving a particular problem a certain way. I started Landeed because I actually tried to use Teal and I couldn't get what I wanted. And that's how I ended up starting Landeed, right? Because like I said, I'm building something that I want. If Teal was offering that to me, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today about Landeed. I'd be building something else, right? So for the users that they're serving, I'm sure they're doing a great job. That user is not me. And there's a lot more people like me that also need it, and that's why we exist. I'm glad there's multiple people taking on multiple cosmetics, multiple layers, multiple users to be able to solve it. So it's a large problem. So, but yeah, I'm sure, outside a lot of people consider them as our competition. We don't. We are built fundamentally different. We don't have economists in our company. We don't have a lot of lawyers. We hire STEM majors, meaning people that are in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We're more likely to have a physicist working inside our company than we are likely to have an economist working inside our company. We are more likely to have an astronomer working inside our company than a management consultant working inside our company. And so the team construct also makes a big difference. Both my two co-founders are technically oriented and inclined. So my CTO, he's Caucasian, he's white, right? And he graduated from Princeton Computational Biology, genetics. My other co-founder is Singaporean, ZJ, and he graduated from Carnegie Mellon in computer science and robotics, right? Like, that's what we do. We are built very differently. Our approach is different. We ship different. We target different users. So maybe they're the closest, but they're not close to what we're doing.
So could you tell our viewers briefly what are the offerings under Landeed?
Yeah. So we cover almost all of entire India. So as long as you have something called a survey number or a CASRA number or a CATIAN number, depends on what state you're in, you enter that into our app and you enter a particular area. And instantly you see a transaction trail regarding who is the present owner and how he has come to own it going back 20, 25 years all the way up until now. That's one. That's a core search engine business. The second thing that we have is what we call the legal opinion, automated legal opinions, ALOs. So instead of going out to the law firm and let them take their sweet time, 1-2 months, we get out a legal opinion for you in 3 to 5 days, including showing you a flow of title and vetted by a real lawyer and kind of telling you, hey, does this transaction make sense? Like, is the title for this particular piece of property clean? And this is important for us because a lot of the times legal firms can be swayed towards a particular transaction because they know they're not on the hook if something goes wrong. We cannot be swayed because my greatest asset is my brand at early stage. So, in fact, majority of the judgments we give in the title opinions, as far as recently, 58% of the time, we have told people not to go ahead with the transaction, right? We have a very neutral opinion on whether you should go forward with the transaction or not. That doesn't mean to say that this is the nature of all transactions. It could very well be those are the type of users that are coming to our platform. I'm not drawing a larger judgment on this. But in terms of other things that we do, we help state governments and even countries right now. We are working with another country that is approaching. And because of the nature of our product that we're working, we actually can give them advisory on zoning and how to zone their cities. Where you're seeing a lot of construction activity. And another thing to this is India has something called circle rates and guideline values, right? We know that majority of the property transactions are not done at real true value. That's not a dirty secret. It's not a truth. Everybody knows, right? And so when these things are happening, we know guideline values should be much higher, and they would, help governments earn a lot more revenue. But we also know that there's political compulsions to why the guideline values are very static and sometimes not changed. But that doesn't mean we cannot provide governments this information that when they do come to the point of changing that guideline value, that this is a particular price point or particular rate that you can look at when you're dealing with this. So essentially, first we want to empower the user. That's our focus. And when we come to enterprises like banks and financial institutions, we have a very clear mandate. So we tell them that, for instance, people know that we raise funding. If you want us to put our money in your fixed deposit in your bank better use our product. Otherwise, I'm not putting money in your bank.
Right.
right? Same thing if some vendor is coming to us and saying, hey, we'd like to help you find an office space because we know your team is growing, whether it's JLL, Collier, or something like that. We say, hey, you need to use our product, then I'll take your services. It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't realize many businesses in India are today still built on comfort of getting licenses
Yeah.
and regulatory capture. And great that you're able to survive on it, but know that people also understand what's going on. Like, if, for instance, if you're trying to build a neobank in India, right? For instance, RBI is not completely independent in India, like as much as, let's say, the Federal Reserve in US is. The central government does have representation on the RBI board here. We know the central government also owns stakes in banks. And so if that were true, then what is my risk of building a neobank, right? Am I just a distribution and marketing arm for a bank that exists? And if so, how easy is it for them to take over my marketing distribution channel versus how easy is it for me to get a license to be able to do that? So I think you want true, things to propel and excel and do all these things, and you wonder why Indian startups don't make money, but still look at the people that make a lot of money in India. It's because they have a license. It's not because they're the best at what they do. It's not because that's where the best talent flows. It's because you are able to get something because you know someone, not because you know something that no one else does. So that's what I would say.
So which sector in PropTech you think have disrupted the real estate, like how it was done before, and in current time, which sector you think is actually disrupting? Starting with you, Ashish.
Can you start with them?
Okay, fine.
I think very interesting and a very, very vast question to answer. There's so much to solve for. The buzzword is ESG. People are trying to solve, to get environmental sustainable goals to be achieved. Definitely worth solving for. I don't know if this can be in PropTech to solve for, but I think the whole climate tech of sorts, which has some element with PropTech to put it up, is definitely one thing which one should focus on, or it's something worth solving for. Number one, honestly, very vast to give an answer, right? Because there's so much to solve. I think there's a lot said, right, that tomorrow's wars would be fought on water. So does water tech, if I have to put it, does it come under the whole PropTech umbrella of sorts? Because there is real estate requirement for that, which can help you solve for those things as well. But prima facie, I think from a goal standpoint, see, while we're solving for investment in real estate, someone solving for discovery in other side of real estate, as such, whether it's investment or induced. Does that other sectors from a venture capitalist or from an investment worthy standpoint might not be as large or not my top priority for people. So people who are trying to work in that should not run around that, but try to solve that problem, because eventually this is what is going to be the larger goal worth solving for it. So ESG, in my opinion, most of our buildings which we are trying to now look at as well as our primary goal. In fact, I think about 70% of buildings are LEED certified or are meeting those criteria. Not all, with all due honesty, but at least the goal is that can we promote that? Can we tell developers with whom we are working with? Can you emphasize on that? If that is not costing you a lot more, while it's also about ROI on the investment, that if it's going to cost, I'm not going to get those equivalent amount of rents, we understand. But if you can, why don't you think of doing, we don't mind taking a little hit on our cap rate in return as an investment standpoint, because eventually I know that tenants 5 years, 10 years from now would look and make this as their priority number one, because everyone wants to at least have that perception, if not intent, have that perception that, oh yeah, we are environment friendly as such, right? So that, in my opinion, is a large 5-10 year goal. It's a slow goal, but it's a 10 year from now, it's going to be the most important goal. So if someone has that patience to invest and go in that tapasya, if I have to put it up that way, then I think that's the journey you should take.
Great. Ashish?
Yeah. So, while Sudarshan spoke about some serious stuff, like, at a very game-changing level, I think the industry by itself has a lot of problems inherently, right? And that's why it's seen as a stepchild in the VC world or even in the private equity world. I think we need to clean a lot of crap in the industry, and that's huge scope for it, right? So all the problems that we're solving, he's solving for transparency in investing in commercial. He's solving for clarity on legal, right? I'm solving for the entire discovery process of a home. I think these are the things which should keep getting built, right? Clean up the industry, because once you clean up the industry and people have confidence, either it's the end user or it's the tenant or it's the investor, then this industry is set to take off in a very, very big way. But till it remains dirty, till it remains opaque, till there's information asymmetry, some people are making money, the rest of them are losing money because of that asymmetry, I think this industry will really struggle for a long time. So I think any effort to change the industry should be to bring in transparency and to bring in, the kind of systems and processes which other industries have already adopted, and which is why they have grown at a far, faster scale than real estate.
So Sanjay, we are noticing sustainable PropTech companies or even clean tech companies are actually disrupting the real estate, because now we are seeing them coming up and there is a huge investment going on. What is your take? Which sector is actually disrupting the real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I understand like decarbonization and being carbon neutral, or even there's some in our batch. There's startups called Cambio and that are really looking at commercial real estate and like decarbonizing and reducing the carbon footprint and things. I think those are really important. But I think it's a first world problem to have, right? So a lot of the grade A commercial property owners in India, the largest landlords are somebody like Blackstone or Brookfield, and maybe they have the compulsion to continue with that, because you have to wonder who they're selling their funds to, right? And where their money is coming from. Just as Indian VC money comes in dollars, US mostly, and their money also comes from pension funds and other institutions. They have certain mandates and things like that. So I think it's great that we're doing that. I look at it as a nice to have, but I think India has a lot more deeper infrastructure problems to solve. And I think something that's really exciting and something I'll talk about my own book, because I'm not in the much Bangalore Gurgaon zone to know what other people are doing and working on. I think GovTech and CivTech in India needs a lot more investment and encouragement. Helping out state governments, helping out central governments to do out a lot of these things. For instance, a lot of people might have noticed like Hyderabad is growing really, really fast. To the extent, might not be in startups, but in a lot of sectors, it's probably going to end up looking a lot better than Bangalore in the next half decade, if not already. And this is something that I speak with my team about as well. It's funny that the cities that have the best tech ecosystems are also the worst and badly administered and managed, because they think they can get away with it. That includes San Francisco, right? And Bangalore is in this point. And a lot of people don't understand the reason that Hyderabad is kind of growing like that is the government has taken an kind of taken note that increased transparency in land transactions and how that goes. If you look at their tech stack and ecosystem, it's the best in the country, and allows me to build rails on top. And it has nothing to do with the literacy of that state or how good it's doing. For instance, Bihar is much better than Karnataka. And we have a tech ecosystem here on how real estate titles are produced and things like that. Nobody would think Bihar is better, right? MP is really great. It has nothing to do with that. And part of the reason is also because the government, sometimes at state level, sometimes at central level, sometimes IAS, sometimes elected officials, think that maybe someone like TCS or Infosys are better served to only build these modules. You don't need TCS and 200 people to build a website that has a login and reproduces documents that are already available on the back end, right? Maybe you trust them to do and handle an entire GST network. But what is static and can be reproduced doesn't require you to be going out there and doing that, right? So, and that whole space, the CivTech, GovTech space, is almost dominated and owned by TCS, Infosys, these kinds of players. I think it would be great if more startups in that space come up, and I think it's exciting. And we probably wouldn't have that problem with one of the problems that we face when we're building something on top is how often government portals are down and how often they go down, right? Like I always, again, mention to people, I tell my investors as well, I can build the prettiest, and I have built the prettiest of the world's, like India's best light bulb, which is my app. But it doesn't matter if the power plant is down all the time. Now I have to build redundancies. Instead of me building better products, I'm figuring out how to build redundancies if something goes down 20% of the time. And they're changing infrastructure on that stuff. And so I think it would be really awesome if some people in that space came in, gave more city intelligence, more urban tech came in. City planning needs to be better. You got a dude that owns a house and surrounded by a mall and high rises, right? Because it's a developer-led model here. It's not municipalities-led model here, right? I think if we're finding a tech stack that is able to empower local decision-making, I think that would add tremendously to India's GDP, tremendously to productivity, tremendously to companies. Because, like, think about how this radically even changes the way we pay people. One of the things we say that when we offer you a package to join our company is not what you're earning in your previous position and we're giving you a hike. No, we don't do that. Or this is what your value in market. One of the ways we determine how we pay them is how can I reduce uncertainty in your life that makes you more dependable as you come to the office. Meaning, if I'm paying you a certain amount of money and you're not able to live in the financial district in Hyderabad because that's where my office is, but you have to live out 1 hour, 2 hours ahead, that adds more variability in when that person can attend the office. And I have to listen to excuses on why he's late. Mainly because the public system transport cannot be trusted and the cities haven't been planned well. And this can all be improved if we just had more CivTech, GovTech intervention and startups come to do that instead of trusting TSYS and Infosys do all our work.
So on my closing note, I want to ask you guys that we have noticed a lot of PropTech companies have reached the exponential growth during pandemic times. Where do you feel, have you reached that exponential growth or it's going to come in this coming year of 2023 or soon? We'll start with you, Sudarshan.
So I'll speak more from an investment standpoint than anything else. So I think we just built the foundation and a very strong foundation for us to take that growth. I don't have to sell what Strata does anymore, but it's now more about the product itself. It's not about the company anymore. But considering with this budget, which has helped us in a large way, 4 or 5 things in the budget, which was very, very good. MLD's market link debentures was one of our biggest competitors when people were deploying money. Like I said, residential minimum nahi dal rahe the, were eventually putting in markets. This was one product such. Now that it's being taxed, not at LTCG level, then taxed at that is one big thing. The continuous rate hikes has also deterred people from investing in residential because you're talking about 9.5% home loan rate. It's why would anybody buy in given time? If as an investment, if you're going to make only 2%, 3% at the end of the day. That's number 2. The whole LTCG cap of 10 crores, the income tax benefit for 10 crores for buying a home is one big thing, because that was also one competition for us where people were like, hey, you will not end up giving me that kind of returns. I might as well just keep that money. Even if I don't make money, post-tax net return is still better than what you can. So that is also a big thing. Certain changes in the REIT, while there's no math or comparison to what they do versus us, such they pretty much do what we do before they became a REIT. So it's not different. It's that their portfolio went into a REIT, investors got a swap on their shares and it became liquid. That's the core difference. There's nothing else. That's another thing which is also that many people are like, okay, our net post-tax returns I'm getting there vis-a-vis here, this is better, and I'll rather take a punt here and start operating. So these has been certain things which has been as a beneficial. So we are seeing this as a growth, and also it's about understanding where your core focus is. Like I said, we are trying to be very focused in industrial and warehousing space as such, while office is also a good portfolio worth continue building. By being a trend mover, being an industry where you can have a monopoly. If I have even 5 million square feet in office space, I'm not even in top 50 owners in today's time, because everyone's very, very large. But if I have 10, 20 million square feet or 5, 10 million square feet in warehousing industry, I'm in the top 10. Right? So there is opportunity for you to be a monopoly or have a large market share in a segment. We're trying to be in that, because when you have large share, you can get better tenants, you can get better value for your assets. Look at Embassy as an example, Prestige as an example, that they became large and they got a solid exit in the REITs when they wanted to exit their portfolio out, right? So that's how we are trying to build. So that's our focus as well this year. macro economy trends are so volatile. I think people right now want more security to their investments as well, because they really don't know what the hell is happening in the market. कल अदानी का कुछ हुआ, कल कुछ और हो गया, where they're saying the stock market portfolio also changing. When you get 10-year, 15-year lock-in agreements with grade A plus tenants, people are very happy that okay, this is audited. Worst comes, I'm not losing money. Tenant can go, tenant can come, but I'm not losing my capital, because that has been the mindset of people that I don't want to lose my capital anymore. I want capital preservation rather than wealth creation. So that's been one of the things. So we have also become bargain hunters. We're looking for assets जहाँ पे हम सस्ता उठा सकें, because we know for a developer also, or for an investor, his LRD rates have gone expensive. His cost of construction financing has also gone expensive. So we understand our investors' money is also that expensive. हम क्यों सस्ते में खरीदें? We'll also buy premium in a sense at discounted values and generate better returns for investors. And that's been pretty much the thing. In fact, our last 2-3 acquisitions we've done is lower than guideline value itself. So clearly shows that we've literally become great bargain hunters, because we are understanding the position we built for ourselves in the market. We are the face for our investors, and it's my fiduciary responsibility to negotiate the best price for them and get into that investment on them. So that's it.
Yes, Ashish.
So I think we have a fairly simple plan for 2023. We want to be in the top 8 cities as a platform. We want people to start experiencing the difference, right? And we want to be the gatekeepers for anyone who's looking to buy a property in India. So that's the aim. We want to build that positioning. We want to be in those cities, and then take it up for the next 5 years from there.
So any current goals for 2023?
This is my goal,
This
to
is
be in
your-
the top 8 cities, and
Okay.
I don't know how to quantify it, but to solidify the positioning that Propsoch is the place to go to for unbiased advice and inputs, right? Whether it's human-led or whether it's tech-led is what we are going to be figuring out in the next 12 months, right? But damn excited about it.
Okay. Sanjay?
Yeah, I mean, we started with a low base, so obviously we're going to have strong growth rates and all of that. But do I think that I am anywhere close to where I want to be in terms of product market fit? No. And it's also possible that you reach product market fit and fall out of it. There are a lot of companies that do that as well. So you want to build a sustainable, durable business. And in terms of what we offer value to the users, I don't think we're close to where we want to be. Like, are we making property transactions, 10 times faster? Not yet. So when I feel like I'm doing that, then I think I'm there. But we're not anywhere close to that. We got a long way to go. So.
Thank you guys for joining us today and sharing some great insights for fundraising, for Proptech sector, and also for our viewers to understand about each role of your company does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.